Brasília, Distrito Federal, 14 de abril 2022. Reino dos Países Baixos e ANAC agradecem a presença de todos e todas. Sejam bem-vindos, bem-vindas ao encontro de rede, gestão aeroportuária inovadora e sustentável. Perspectivas brasileira e holandesa. E começa agora uma série de apresentações. Nossa primeira apresentação com o senhor Ronei Sajoro Glansman, secretário de Aviação Civil do Ministério da Infraestrutura. Ele trará o tema: a situação dos aeroportos do Programa de Parceria de Investimentos, PPI. Por gentileza, senhor Ronei, fique à vontade com a palavra.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for us to be here. I'm Ronnie Glansman from the National Secretariat of Civil Aviation, and I will talk a little bit about our PPP programs in terms of the airports in Brazil, the concession program in Brazil. But before we start, I'd like to show a very small video. It's not so updated, but it's very interesting to show the opportunities in Brazil, especially in the area of infrastructure. If you allow me, I will present a short video, 2 or 3 minutes, not more than this, I promise. And I promise also to be very fast and quick in my presentation in order to guarantee the objectiveness of our meeting, okay? So, please, 1 minute in Portuguese.
And of course, investment opportunities.
Soy, coffee, sugar, chicken, oranges, beef, corn, iron, beverages, cotton.
That sums up Brazil. Opportunities are everywhere, be it in the free economic zone of Manaus, in the oil and gas industry in Rio de Janeiro, fruit production in the São Francisco Valley, in the production of iron ore in Pará, which continues to grow significantly, in the large grain crop of the Central West region, or the enormous potential of our renewable energy matrix. But how can we integrate all this? How can we connect all the different countries into one? How can the country advance further and further? That is the job of the Ministry of Infrastructure. We have one of the largest transportation networks in the world and promising growth potential for the coming years. The time has come to diversify our matrix, further increasing the participation of railways, waterways, and cabotage transport. The Ministry of Infrastructure's mission is to connect Brazil. Today, investing in the country means to be in touch with great investment opportunities. A lot has already begun to become a reality, and much is yet to come. Our project agenda for the coming years includes all means of transport. In the railways, the strategy is to connect the growing production of the countryside to the main ports of Brazil. Our roadway sector also keeps growing, and this growth is accompanied by investment possibilities. In each Brazilian port, thousands of opportunities arrive every day, and soon there will be a lot more to come. As for airports, The new concessions made the sector take off and gain even more prominence. Expectation for the next steps is skyrocketing. We are ready to move forward alongside the world's great investors. In the coming years, from north to south, we will see a great transformation in transport and infrastructure. Be a part of it. Ministry of Infrastructure. Our mission is to connect the country by river, roads, air, and sea.
I would like to show this is a initial information about how Brazil is performing now after the COVID-19 crisis. Of course, the crisis of COVID was terrible for everybody worldwide, suffered a lot with the COVID-19 crisis, and Brazil is recovering. I can see, everybody can see that the domestic market, the domestic daily flights, seems to be the strongness of Brazil. Because in Brazil, as you can see, the green line is our reference, is 2019 line, our performance. We were performing in Brazil something about 2,000 flights per day, domestic flights per day. And now the blue line, as you can see, the very light blue here is the year of the COVID-19 crisis, 2020. The orange one is 2021. We can see a recovering process here. But now we are achieving again with the 2022 curve. We can see that we are achieving again the levels before the pandemic crisis. It sounds very nice for us. It seems that we are recovering the traffic, especially in the domestic flights. Looking for the, let me see. Yes, is it working? No. Alguém pode passar o slide para mim, por favor? Porque não está funcionando. Okay. The international flights, talking about the international flights, we don't see the same recovering process, but we are performing almost 40% less than we were performing since the previous, before the pandemic crisis. But the idea here is only to show the power of the domestic market in Brazil. Brazil is a continental-sized country. We have a lot of opportunities. We must to cover all the countries, and people now they are flying inside Brazil, as we are facing a lot of difficulties to flying abroad. Of course, most of you came from Europe, so we must to test, you must to show some certifications, and people in Brazil are preferring, of course, to fly in domestic flights. That's why our domestic market is recovering faster than the international one. But we do believe that the international one will coming up again in a few years. Next slide, please. I don't know if it's working here. Yes. This slide is going to show that Brazil is still, the Brazilians is still flying too low. We fly just a little if we compare with the international passengers. In Brazil, air trips per capita, a year, the Brazilian flies less than 0.5 times per year. So we have a lot of room to increase our potential in the market. The North American marketing, the passenger in the United States, they fly almost 3 times on average per year, and markets like European, like Germany and France, 1 time per year, 1.5 times per year, and in Brazil we can see a big room to expand our market, our civil aviation market. We have a very large area, we have a lot of people trying to fly it, and so we have great opportunities to explore in Brazil. Talking a little bit about the previous rounds of concessions, as the ministry said during the lunch, Brazil has already 44 airports being managed by the private sector. We start this process 10 years ago, 1 decade ago, and we had 5 rounds ready. This slide is out of date because we had only 5 previous rounds, but few weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, we finished the how can I say, the transferring process to about the 60 round. I will talk a little bit about the 60 round. The 60 round we did last year, 2021, right in the middle of the crisis of the COVID-19, and I will talk a little bit. Well, in terms of CapEx investments, we had already invested $5 billion in our airports. As you can see, I know that you have visited some airports in Brazil, like Viracopos, Confins, Guarulhos, and Brasília. So those airports received a great part of this investment, $5 billion US, and we will still have more $4 billion US to be invested in those infrastructures. We did the first round in 2011. In 2019, we will start to making the cluster round, putting together profitable and non-profitable airports. So it was 3 clusters in that time in the 50 round. The block Northeast, the block Center-West, and the block Southwest. So it was the first time that we were auctioning airports together, join profitable and non-profitable assets in the same cluster. Well, the results everybody can see. We've got some very important changes in our infrastructure. This is Natal Airport, our first one concession program. It's a very special airport on the northeast of Brazil. Here we have Viracopos, you've been there, and Brasília, after the investments, and also Guarulhos, the international terminal of Guarulhos. I think most of you will use this terminal to go back home. This is our third round of concession, Galeão in Rio, and also Confins. You've been there in Confins, the capital of Minas Gerais state. It's a very interesting infrastructure, very well conducted by the concessionaire. And here, the 4th round of concession, Porto Alegre on the south of Brazil, Salvador on the northeast of Brazil, an important tourist city in our country, Florianópolis also in the south, and Fortaleza in the northeast, and even a very interesting gateway to achieve Europe and North America from Brazil. A little bit more about Porto Alegre, the brand new cargo terminal in Porto Alegre, the runway expansion that you can see, 900 meters, that will allow international long-haul flights. This is Fortaleza, a brand new terminal, and also some expansions and in terms of runway. This is a very emblematic picture. This is the auction of the 50 round. It was made in 2019 on March. And this slide is very interesting because it shows the presence of very important players, global investors, global operations, bringing to Brazil the benchmarks and the best practices in terms of airport operations. We can see here ADP Group from France, ANAC from Spain, Socican, it's a regional operator in Brazil, Zurich Airport was there, Aviação from Germany, CCR, it's a global player but based in Brazil, a Brazilian capital, the Fraport from Germany, Vinci from France, and also Agunsa from Chile. In that time, the average auction premium was almost 1,000%. It shows us a lot of appetite to the modeling of the cluster system. It was the first time that we give an auction putting together a lot of airports, profitable and non-profitable airports. Talking about the 60 round, the 6th round was the last one. We did in the 2021 on April. It's 1 year ago, right in the middle, as I said, of the pandemic crisis. Nobody believes that we could do this during this period of crisis. It was, in fact, very challenging to provide this auction, to deliver these auctions on time, and it was a success. It was the biggest, in the numbers of the airport, it was the biggest auction that we ever made in Brazil. 22 airports being auctioned together in only one session. It's a multiple choice sessions. So we received some bids. 22 airports, 3 clusters. The red ones on the south, the orange ones in the center of Brazil, and also the green one in the north of Brazil. This is the same picture. Our ministry at that time, Tarcísio de Freitas, knocking the horn. It was a very emblematic picture also. And again, the presence of global investors, very important players in this market, operators and funds. Patria is a Brazilian bank that manages the money of the Blackstone Infrastructure Fund. Houston Airport was in partnership with Patria and Blackstone in this auction. CCR appears again. ADP from France again. Vinci won the cluster of north of the country, the Amazon region. XP Investments, it's a Brazilian private active fund. Corporación América from South America, from Argentina, that manages the airport of Brasília and Natal. Socican, again, a very important regional player in Brazil. And ANAC from Spain. Again, once more, an average auction premium other than up to 1,000%. It's a very impressive number. Let's see. Tá funcionando. Alguém pode passar o slide? Isso. Ok. A menos. Yes. Now is the key point of the presentation. Is talk a little bit about the 7th round. This visit, this mission, commercial mission to Brazil, it's a very emblematic for us, and it's very appropriate to receive you here because we are almost launching the new bidding notes about our 7th round of concession. The 7th round of concession in Brazil, it's a very important round because it brings Congonhas Airport. You've been there, I know this, I think yesterday or this week. Congonhas is a very centrally located in Brazil. There is an image. One slide more, please. Mais não, para frente. Mais Yes. Obrigado. That's Congonhas Airport. Strategically located in the downtown of São Paulo, a very high-yield airport, managing already 22 million passengers per year, receiving the major companies, airlines in Brazil, being prepared to be international airport. Today, Congonhas is operating only domestic flights, but we are providing the capex needed to transform the airport in an international one. A lot of opportunities to fly to Buenos Aires, Argentina, to fly to Chile, to fly to Bogotá, to fly to Latin American regions. Of course, there is no conditions to fly in a long haul because the society is very limited, is very tight, but a lot of opportunities to fly internationally to the South America countries. So this airport bringing us a lot of challenges to develop. As you can see, the region around Congonhas is the density is very high in terms of people living there. So a lot of ESG challenges to face during the management of this airport. Here, you have to manage the noise, the aircraft noise, the pollution. You have to harmonize the airport operation with the communities around this airport. In the same time, you must to deliver this investment to be operating because it's a very strategic. I think most of us here, we are all the time using Congonhas to access the downtown of São Paulo. That's a very complicated city in terms of traffic. It's difficult to go around São Paulo, so Congonhas seems to be a very interesting. Coming back here, we are requiring 1.5 billion of US dollars to the entire round of concession. Most of this investment must to happen in the São Paulo cluster. Congonhas is the lead of a big group of regional airports, including the red ones, including airports in the north of the country, in the center of the country, and also in the states of Minas Gerais. So Congonhas will require almost 800 millions of dollars, US dollars of investments, and will bring a lot of opportunities. We have also the North 2 cluster, is based in Belém. Belém is an important capital on the north of the country, together with Macapá is another small capital in Brazil. And we have, for the first time in our concession program, a dedicated airports, a dedicated cluster to the general aviation. We have two important airports in terms of general aviation in Brazil. One just in the downtown of São Paulo, called the Campo de Marte, is even closer to Congonhas. And another one is Jacarepaguá, is in the neighborhood of Rio de Janeiro, Barra da Tijuca. So those two airports together, they represent a great part of the general aviation traffic in Brazil. So it's a very important cluster for us, because general aviation in Brazil, it's a very huge market, it's a very big market, and must to receive investments, to be developed. So the idea is to incentivize the general aviation in Brazil. Not only, we have in Brazil also the private airports dedicated to the general aviation, but those two public airports in Brazil, Jacarepaguá and Campo de Marte, takes a big portion of the Brazilian general aviation market. We are talking about initial fee and variable fee. It's important to say that our concession model is based and to catch the NPV of the project in two phases. The phase one, it represents 50% of the entire NPV of the cash flow of the project. It tends to be it must be catch as an upfront payment. So it's converted as initial fee. We call it as an initial fee. And so for this cluster, we are requiring these amounts of initial fee. It's representing 50% of the NPV of the cluster. And the other part of the NPV, the other 50%, we transform it we convert it as a variable fee. I mean, it's a percentage of the total revenue, the gross revenue of the concessionaire. So the government will take, for example, in this case, almost 6%. In fact, those numbers are preliminary ones. We are finishing the adjustments. This process is under the analysis of the TCU. TCU is finishing this their analysis, and probably the numbers, the figures will change a little bit, but we are expecting to receive the final approval of TCU on the beginning of the next month, on the beginning of May, publishing few days after the approval of TCU. TCU is our court of account. We depending of the approval of the Court of Account in Brazil to publish the bidding notes, and the idea is to be publishing these bidding notes on the middle of May, auctioning on by the end of July, for example. It tends to give it from 70 days to 90 days between bidding notes and the auction as well. Well, talking a little bit about the other process that we are processing in Brazil. We have two devolution process ongoing. One is Viracopos. I know that you've been in Viracopos, knowing the airport, and another one is Natal, our first concession. it was concessions that didn't perform it very well, so the concessionaire decided to return the concessions to the government. We have a law that allows, so they are returning the concessions, but they still remain operating the airport, and the government is preparing a new round of concession. That's why Viracopos is in this situation, and São Gonçalo do Amarante in the same situation. For both rounds, we are waiting also the final approval of TCU, and the idea is to publish the bidding notes, the documents, as soon as possible. Natal, São Gonçalo do Amarante is the most advanced process that we have in terms of devolution, and Viracopos is coming after Natal auction. The idea here is to auction both of those airports still this year. We don't have a defined month to do, but probably we are doing in the next months. And the last one is a brand new information. It's a cluster around only to Rio de Janeiro, putting together two airports in Rio. As you know, Rio de Janeiro has two major airports, Galeão, the international one, and Santos Dumont, the domestic one. Galeão is returning the concession also. It was a concession that was made in 2013, I think. They are returning due to some problems with the contracts and some feasibility difficulties to put the concession, to continue the concession. And now we decided to make it an entire round, only with the airports of Rio de Janeiro together. So this will happen only in 2023, because we are still preparing the feasibility studies. The feasibility studies are not ready yet, but we are working on it, and I think that in 2023 is coming next once more round of concessions about the Rio de Janeiro's round. It's managing 23 million, before the crisis, of course, 23 million of passengers. In fact, that now, due to the crisis, Rio de Janeiro, they fell down a lot in terms of traffic, but they are trying to recover. The fact is that Rio de Janeiro, on the past, and in the times of the Olympic Games and the Soccer World Cup, they achieved, for example, almost 28, almost 29 million passengers. So it's a very huge market with a lot of conditions to be back to the game and to surplus this crisis that they are living in that time. Well, trying to be very objective as possible. This is our portfolio, our pipeline of investments in terms of concession program in Brazil. I think my opinion is that we have very interesting assets in Brazil being auctioned. Here in this presentation, I talk only about the primary market. I mean, the market that the government is selling the airports, is giving the concession. But we also have in Brazil a secondary market. I mean, we have a lot of operators in Brazil, and we know that some of them, they are selling stakes in their airports. And I think that there are some opportunities also in Brazil in the secondary market, not only in the primary market. So the suggestion that I have to you, that I give to you, is bear in mind Brazil, consider the modeling of Brazil. During the time, I couldn't explore so many here, the characteristics of the modeling, but you have a very market-friendly modeling with risks very, very aligned in Brazil. We're trying to work with a non-prescriptive and non-prescribed CAPEX. The entire program of CAPEX in Brazil now, it's a non-prescribed. We are requiring to the concessionaire a level of services. We are asking to give us the level of services, but the engineering solution is given by the concessionaire. So we don't prescribe the engineer solution. How many square meters they must to provide? We don't know. The solution of engineering, the solution of the CapEx is provided and is given by the concessionaire. And of course, we are prescribing only the level of service that the government and the society of Brazil demands for those kind of assets. So bear in mind, Brazil, if you need any more information, we are totally available to discuss the modeling, to go deeply in the modeling. But I'm sure that we have perhaps one of the most market-friendly model around the world, looking for the other countries, looking for the other models of concessions. I can see Brazil as a market, very, very market-friendly model in terms of airport concession. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here presenting these important portfolios, this important pipeline, and I hope to see you as soon as possible to talk and discuss about this program. Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here.
Senhoras e senhores, ladies and gentlemen, é convidado para compor mesa de abertura oficial deste evento. I'd like to invite to be part of opening session, Senhora Afka Mulder, ministra conselheira da Embaixada do Reino dos Países Baixos, please. Senhor Ronei Sadioro Glansman, secretário nacional de Aviação Civil, senhor Marcel Van Hatten, deputado federal e presidente do Grupo Parlamentar Brasil Países Baixos, e o senhor Tiago Souza Pereira, diretor da ANAC. Please have a seat. Now I invite to speak Mrs. Mulder, please.
Yes, I think you can hear me. Yes, perfect. Muito obrigada. Thank you very much. I think the honor is all mine that I can actually open the next part of our program today, which is this network meeting, innovative and sustainable airport management from the Brazilian and the Dutch perspective combined. So welcome to all. It's an honor for me to open this together with this table of Senoras and Excellencies that I'm here with together with Mr. Ronnie Glansman, Marcel van Hattem, and Tiago Sousa Pereira. Muito prazer, muito honor. So the Dutch government has a long history of cooperation with the Brazilian infrastructure sector and with the Ministry of Infrastructure. We signed an MOU already in 2008 on ports, maritime transport and logistics, but specifically on the civil aviation that we're here for today. We have an MOU signed in 2013, and we've just renewed the MOU as well in 2020, and we're in the middle of executing it, which of course because of the pandemic was a bit more difficult than we would all have hoped to. But we did renew it, and one of the planned activities in the scope of this MOU was actually always this visit. So I'm very happy that the technical visit of our trade mission from the Netherlands is here now this week, actually in Brazil, as part of executing this MOU. I think it's an important step, and I'm also very delighted that we can actually do this in person again. For us as well, it's the first trade mission from the Netherlands that we have been able to receive in over 2 years. I already mentioned it a few times to my colleagues, but that's why I'm here already with a big smile on my face, because it's so important to be back again face to face as well. So I've been hearing back that it has already been a very inspiring mission. So that's very good to hear. So once again, very welcome to both the Brazilian and the Dutch partners that we have here today, in the public and the private side. So on the Brazilian side, a special thanks for ANAC for hosting us here in this event, and many thanks again to the excellent and competent team cooperation that we've been having with the teams of the Ministry of Infrastructure, the Secretary of Civil Aviation, ANAC and InfoAero. Without you, this would not have been such a success, also the mission here. And then on the Dutch side, of course, I would really like to welcome again our Dutch colleagues here. We have a cluster of 9 Dutch companies here present from all sides of the spectrum, right, with a lot of expertise on several things. So being led by Mr. Frank Janssen from the Netherlands Aerospace Group. So we have representative of Ansar here, of Deerns, NACO, SACO Airport Equipment, 270, Trilo Airport Maintenance Equipment, Unified International and WCC Group. So they will present themselves later today. So I won't say much about that because I leave that to the company representatives themselves. But in a nutshell, this group promotes innovation and sustainability. Those I think are the 2 main terms that we need to talk about also in international relations. So they offer state-of-the-art solutions and technologies. And what I would like to highlight on this is actually 2 things. One thing that I would like to say is that as the Netherlands, we take really pride also working with cluster approaches, right? We believe in system thinking, in clusters, bringing expertise and knowledge together, especially where innovation is one of the key drivers. And of course, in the case of civil aviation and airports, this is where innovation is one of the key drivers of at the moment, also in all the challenges and opportunities that we are facing. So I'm also specifically happy, I know Frank is walking around with an extra big smile on his face today because we just heard today that in the Netherlands a very big program on the transition of aviation towards the future in this field of sustainability and innovation has been approved. Embraer is actually part of the proposal, so there will be much more Dutch-Brazilian cooperation coming up. But I think this is a good example also where we need to work together in a custom system way of thinking, and where we also really understand very well that the public and the private side both have to play an important role in moving forward, and that they have to understand each other very well. So I think that's also exactly what we're doing here today with all of you, public and private actors, all taking their own role and interacting to get a step further. And then the other thing I would like to highlight before I leave the floor to you is that we're here to build a long-term relationship and cooperation. So this fact-finding mission this week has been really successful, and it's very enthusiastic to see you all here. But it's one step in a much broader process. So I'm already looking forward to the technical visit of the Brazilian side to the Netherlands later this year that we were discussing over lunch as well. That will be important, and we are foreseeing annual meetings and regular cooperation. So I'm hoping this event today will also bring even better insight into where the business opportunities lies and the areas of cooperation, first of all. But secondly, I also hope it will help to, highlight this longer-term engagement that we're here for, and that we can work together to make the civil aviation more innovative, more sustainable, and more efficient. And I would like to end with a quote on that, in which I really believe, which is, "Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success." So thank you very much.
Senhor Ronei Sadioro Glansman, secretário nacional de Aviação Civil, por gentileza, fique à vontade com a palavra.
Good afternoon again. Once again, my pleasure to be here. I would like to greet all the representatives of the Dutch government and also the Embassy of Netherlands in Brazil, and also the representatives of the trade mission. It's a pleasure to receive all of you here in our country and to discuss such important topics in terms of civil aviation. As After Mulder said, Ms. After Mulder said, this long-term cooperation is very important for us in Brazil. Brazil has a very important industry in terms of civil aviation. We have a lot of commitments in terms of sustainable in our sector. And the cooperation is the only way to develop it as quick as possible, new technologies, new alternatives to continue producing in our industry. Our industry is a very intensive in terms of fuel burning, It's a very strategic issue for us. You must to deal all the time with the sustainable aspects, with the sustainable issues. And I think that Brazil has a lot of opportunities, but needed to cooperate, needed to receive new technologies, innovative initiatives in this sector. Brazil has a very strongness in terms of biomass production. We have a lot of alternative of biomass in order to get some incentives and to get some alternative fuels for our industry. I think that the sustainable aviation fuel and sustainable propulsions are a subject that we cannot avoid anymore. We must to face the agenda of the environment, the commitments in terms of environment. It's a very strategic agenda, and we cannot postpone anymore these discussions. We need to be active. We need to really do the things, and we need to be a true green aviation. Yeah? What I said, a true green aviation is because all the chain, all the supply chain, all the parts of this our industry, we must to develop new technologies. And in this way, I think that Brazil and Netherlands has a lot to work together. In one hand, Brazil has diversified metrics in terms of agriculture, agribusiness. We have multiple sources of the biomass. We have different routes to achieve a sustainable fuel or even a sustainable propulsion for our aircrafts. And in another hand, Netherlands has all the conditions to contribute in terms of technology, in terms of new methodologies, in putting together the strongness of Brazil with the strongness of Netherlands. We can achieve quickly, faster, the goals and the targets in terms of sustainability. So it's a commitment of Brazil. We have signed some important agreements, international agreements, especially in the ICAO environment. So Brazil is very committed to be greener in our aviation, to be net zero in our aviation. So that's why we are preparing our airlines and our airports to face this challenge for the next decade. These discussions is not for the future, these discussions is for now. We need to discuss this. It's a strategic agenda. It's an agenda involved with the survival of our Earth, of our planet. So it's important to develop, to start right now. So again, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a great opportunity to discuss this important topic, and I'm sure that we will learn a lot and to get new opportunities emerging from this kind of discussion. So welcome, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much to the Embassy of Netherlands in Brazil, and let's discuss and let's work together to get a greener aviation faster as possible. Thank you very much.
Senhoras e senhores, senhor Marcel Van Hatten, deputado federal e presidente do Grupo Parlamentar Brasil, Países Baixos, para uso da palavra.
Good afternoon, everybody. Boa tarde a todos. I would first like to thank for the invitation by the Dutch Embassy to be here together with all of you who are visiting Brazil, some of you for the very first time, so feel welcome. Good afternoon, Ms. Afka Mulder, Minister Councillor of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and I thank you too for the nice lunch we had just a few moments ago, offered by the Dutch Embassy. Also Mr. Ronei Sajoro Glansman, who's been a great friend of us throughout this mandate as federal deputy. He's the Secretary of the National Civil Aviation in Brazil, and also Thiago Souza Pereira, Director of ANAC. It's a pleasure to be here with you, especially for me. It's an honor as a Dutch-Brazilian citizen, as I was telling you before, to be here as a, let's say, facilitator for anything I can mean of help for those who come to Brazil from the Netherlands. Brazil and the Netherlands are trading partners of utmost importance, and this is also because of the strategically located country of the Netherlands in Europe, a gateway via the port of Rotterdam, via the Schiphol airport, and so on and so forth. And this is why our collaboration is already very strong. Brazilians and Dutch have a long history of partnership, and I'm sure that with the new developments that we just saw here on your presentation, Mr. Roney, we will see much more happening in the coming years. So very good to see all this involvement of Dutch businesses here, and also to be now authorized to tell everybody that we will have, at least so said the Minister of Infrastructure a few moments ago, return meeting to the Netherlands, and we expect also to have Brazilian entrepreneurs there. And this I say as a Brazilian and a member of parliament, because we also want Brazilian businesses to go to the Netherlands and strengthen our relationship. I would also like to say that our mission as a parliamentary friendship group in the National Congress is to facilitate the approval of bills and international agreements that might be important for both countries. We had a important agreement with the Netherlands and also with St. Martin approved in the National Congress in 2020 and 21 in both houses. It was signed in 2019, and in less than 2 years, you may think this is a long time, but for politics, it's, I must say, it's short. It was approved not only because we have worked very hard on it, but because we had all the support of the Dutch embassy and also of the Ministry of Infrastructure to make it happen. So since July 1st, 2021, the Open Skies Agreement between Brazil and the Netherlands, which was actually an update of previous agreements, came into force. And this is also one of the deliverables that we can now be happy to announce in such a meeting. To end, I would just once more thank the Ministry of Infrastructure, Minister Marcelo Sampaio, who is not present here, but was very gentle to be with us during the lunch, and that has already committed himself to go to the Netherlands probably in the end of this year. And also I would like to thank every one of you that have come from the Netherlands to Brazil or from other countries where you are based to take part in this mission. And I would then thank Frank Janssen as the leader of the mission for being so helpful in organizing everything here too. So let's go back to work, I would say. Thank you very much for your attention.
E fará uso da palavra agora o senhor Tiago Souza Pereira, diretor da ANAC.
Good afternoon to all, ladies and gentlemen. We are very proud of hosting this event, this very important event for Brazilian government. On behalf of the board of ANAC, Mr. Ricardo Catanã, Mr. Luiz Ricardo, I would like to give a warm welcome to the Minister, Chancellor of the Netherlands, Mrs. Efke Mulder, and to our legislative representative, the President of the Brazilian Dutch Parliamentary Group, Mr. Marcel van Hatter, and Mr. Roney Glansman, my friend of civil aviation, of concession programs, airport concession program, which is representing the Ministry of Transportation. I would like to thank you for convening this network meeting with the Brazilian government. I believe that it comes in a very strategic moment, strategic moment when we are heading the 7th round of concession of the Brazilian airports, as Rony said. And this is a great opportunity for us to discuss with the private sector, the foreign investors, on what we have been doing to modernize, simplify, and develop in a sustainable way the Brazilian aviation sector. In the last few years, Brazil has experienced a very fast and inclusive process of modernization of the aviation infrastructure. Mr. Rony showed the numbers, showed the pictures of the expansions in our airports. This process was only possible because the Brazilian government provided the regulatory framework in a very transparent manner, making the rules clear and respecting the concession agreements. As a result, investors from all over the world trust in process. We have a modeling, like as Rony said, a very recognized concession modeling, and are more than willing to take part of it. The bids of the sixth round, the past round, are proof of this recognition of all the market. And we are hoping to see the same level of enthusiasm in the 7th round, which is coming next. As the Civil Aviation Authority of Brazil is ANAC is an international reference in terms of certification of our aeronautical products, and it's responsible for establishing regulations on safety, security, and facilitation of air transport, aligned with the standards of ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization. We are aware of the latest innovation of our sector. We are one of the first authorities in the world to ever issue a rule on RPAS and to start the process of certification of eVTOLs. Our work places Brazil as one of the most important contributors to the international aviation, with one highest level of safety and security in the world. This is our priority and always has been. I could not end my intervention today without mentioning that Brazilian government is fully committed to preserving the environment by using energy solutions that are social, economic, and environmentally sustainable. Based on our tradition on the production and use of sustainable energy source and on the successful experience with, for instance, electric energy, ethanol, and biodiesel, we aim to expand the use sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, in Brazil as a means to achieve decarbonization of our industry. We understand that achieving rapid production of SAF is the most effective way to reduce the carbon impact of aviation. Policies that accelerate its production incentivizes its use and reduce its costs are a priority to the aviation sector and to use Brazilian government and to the Brazilian government. And this will be one of the topics of today's discussions, today's presentations. With no further ado, I thank you again for convening such a diverse audience in this networking meeting, and I wish you all a very productive event. Thank you, everyone. In Dutch, dank u wel.
Senhoras e senhores, desfaz-se neste momento esta mesa de abertura. This opening session is over. E dentro de instantes, perspectivas holandesas neste nosso primeiro encontro de rede, gestão aeroportuária inovadora e sustentável, perspectivas brasileira e holandesa. Obrigado, senhores, senhora. É convidado ao palco neste momento o senhor Frank Jansen para a condução da série de apresentações das empresas holandesas. Please, fique à vontade.
Yeah, actually I don't need a microphone, but I think for the translator it is pleasant to hear what I'm saying. Thank you very much for having us here and give us the opportunity to explain a bit about the situation in the Netherlands with respect to the aviation industry, and to show what the number of companies that are present here bring to the aviation industry to make it more efficient and also sustainable. And also to immediately step into a request that Secretary Ronnie just presented. We are also going to give you a short introduction of how we deal in the Netherlands with sustainable aviation fuels, how we look at it into the future, which will be done by Ruud. So I hope that the presentation is, oh, it is ready. Okay, you see, that's always good to work with people that are very efficient and can think ahead, because it was said that I organized this mission, but of course I'm a managing director. I can only direct, but organizing is much more difficult. So we are very happy that Marcelo Cantor and that with the help of the embassy here in Brasília, and also with the organization even in the Netherlands, have managed to set up this program. So thank you very much for that. So my name is Frank Jansen. I'm heading the Netherlands Aerospace Group, and that is the Association for the Aerospace and Airport Industry. It is complicated because in the beginning we only had the NAG being an industry-oriented organization for aircraft, but we saw that bringing everything together, like the maintenance, repair and overhaul and the infrastructure in the airports, makes it much more efficient to cope with all the challenges that we have today. So the NAG now consists of aircraft manufacturing, airport development and infrastructure, aircraft maintenance services, and the members is very peculiar because they're not only industry, it's also the education centers and also the research centers in the Netherlands. And even the ministry, and that is, I think, very peculiar maybe in your view, but even the Ministry of Defense is a member of the NAG. And the reason for that is because the Ministry of Defense, the Air Force, is doing a lot of flying and is also challenged with things like sustainability. So there we find each other. The companies in the Netherlands, they have a turnover of about 5 billion in aerospace and airport, but only 800 million is directly associated to the airport industry. So that's only the industry without construction, so technical industry, also engineering, consulting, actually the companies that you will also see here today. More than 2,000 people earn their wages in this field, and it's a growing area. I think everything is growing now after the pandemic, but it was also already growing before the pandemic. The reason why it's so complicated also for an association is because I have very peculiar members. It's not only the SMEs, but it is also, for instance, Boeing. It's also Airbus. It's also Embraer, because they're all situated in the Netherlands. It's also KLM, engineering and maintenance for the MRO. It's also Van der Lande, one of the huge companies in the world for luggage handling systems, and a numerous amount of smaller companies. And actually, they are all convinced with one phrase. Africa mentioned an interesting phrase. This phrase is about why we are a member of the association. If we want to go fast, you can better do it on your own. But if you want to go far, you better do it together. And that's actually something that we constantly keep repeating, because this is not only counting within the association, but it's also the way that we cooperate with people outside of the Netherlands. So, for instance, also with Brazil. What we do within the NAG is help the members with creating their network, gaining more knowledge, and creating business opportunities for the members. That's actually why we are here today, because we, together with the government, we always do things together with the government, because aviation industry is strategic, so it requires fine-tuning. But there is also another reason why we do this with the government. To come back, let's say, on issues that you just mentioned about sustainability, for instance. Sustainability in aviation is a responsibility of everybody. Yeah? It cannot be done only by the industry, because we cannot invest so much where we see that the benefit is only far in the future. So we need to have the government to act together with us to do the major investments that we need to create new systems for sustainable aviation fuel, for electric flying, for hydrogen aircraft. So that is something that we need the government for. But also, we need the government because you determine the regulations. I mean, we can build beautiful things, but if they're not allowed to fly, I mean, yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah? And we need the talent to help us to make this happen. And also the talent development is, of course, something where the government is playing a very important role. And if the government is, let's say, is going in that direction, you will find us as industry, yes, we do this together. And a very nice example is that we heard today of having this growth fund. It is a proposal that has been made together with the Ministry of Economic Affairs and the Ministry of Infrastructure in the Netherlands, and the industry and the knowledge centers. It's about 400 million of joint investment. So we as industry put in half and the government puts in half. So that is, let's say, a good example how to get to the future. Maybe one thing more to mention. If we feel that there is enough traction after the meeting today and the 2 days that we had here in Brazil, and there is gaining traction when Brazil is coming to the Netherlands to further talk about the items that have been addressed here, then actually, I'm already convinced that it will happen, but we need to build up, of course, this process. Then we are going into a process of 3 years, a strategic process where we will define all kinds of events and activities to jointly develop the relationship with clear objectives. So an MOU, of course, is always very nice, but it doesn't always bring, let's say, what has been described as being the objective and the whereases in the MOU. It will only happen when we do things together. And that's actually what is happening this week and what we are going to develop for the next years. Anything else I need to add? I'm looking to... No, because I have to improvise a bit, because we were not specifically sure about the setting of today. And we really like that, doing a bit of improvisation. I'm really happy to see that so many people have joined this meeting. Maybe there is a question now, or shall we first do all the pitches, and maybe afterwards we can do the Q&A, or we will have a coffee break, and then after the presentation of Ruud, we can mingle and maybe talk further about what you have seen, or what will be presented. That sounds like a plan? Sounds like a plan. Good. Then we start with the short pitches, and yeah, jump into the deep. We have Igor here, Igor Zikov, who's going to pitch his company Ansart. They have 3 minutes to do this, and you don't see my face, but he will.
How it works?
Yeah, you have to use the microphone for the translator.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for this possibility. My name is Igor Zikov. I'm a Managing Director of Ansart BV, company based in Amsterdam. We are developer, producer, and the supplier of system and products for air traffic control, surveillance, and communication. We are more than 20 years experience working worldwide. So we supply our solutions, our turnkey solution, the products for ANSPs, for the airports, both large airports and small as well. Such systems we already discussed it during lunch, like it could be very relevant for Brazil, like remote towers or mobile solutions, which is easy to move. So our advantages is that we are flexible, meaning that we can tailor our products to your needs. So we are very fast in reaction, so we have a 24/7 support. I forgot about it. So this is just a short list of our products. Our list is quite huge, but we, with our products and solutions, we cover almost all the needs to control the airspace. So there are some bullet points of our company. So we are looking forward to work in Brazil. This market is very interesting for us. So we would be happy to help you with optimizing of air traffic management, of developing it. So this is briefly it. So thank you very much for your attention.
So I'm not going to introduce every time the next speaker, because that is the beauty of having a presentation. So if you just, on the last slide, you turn, and then the next speaker will automatically come forward. Otherwise, I'm constantly running here and there. And yeah, I'm trying to decrease my role. I'm very good in that. Also managing.
Thank you, Frank. Good afternoon, and apologies for my voice. It's been 3 long days, I think, but I'll try anyway. My name is Anke Matthijssen. I'm the Division Director of Airports for Deerns, and I'm here together with my colleague, Rodrigo Bucket. He's in the back. He's actually based in Sao Paulo. Deerns is an engineering and consultancy company specialized in building services, energy and building physics. So basically what we say, we make your environments safe, comfortable and sustainable. Of course, sustainability, that's something that I heard today a lot, which makes me very happy. And it's actually what drives our staff to make the environments and our clients a little bit better every day. We are doing a lot of projects every year, well, sustainability is an important theme of that. We are a Dutch company by origin, currently based in 8 countries, and our youngest office, but already 10 years old, is in Sao Paulo. We do what we call the built environment, but we focus on various market sectors, airports being one of them, but also real estate, data centers, high-tech and life sciences, and healthcare. And our office in Brazil used to be focusing on data centers, but currently also on the airports. We have a lot of experience at airports already for over 60 years, starting with Schiphol Airport. We were there from the beginning of the terminals as they are right now. But we have been working with Aéroport de Paris, Rome, a lot of airports throughout the world. And very nice to tell you that we've always also working in Brazil. 10 years ago, we did together with NACO the basic design for Viracopos, the new terminal. And currently, since a few months, we are working on the Pier 3 on Guarulhos, which is actually the first airport project in Brazil, which makes us really proud. Yeah, and there's many more. What we exactly do in these airports is, well, I told you, it's about engineering. But you can imagine in airports, in terminals, but also on the apron and also on the air side, there's many systems that have to work really well on the building, but also to make sure that the operation in the airports goes well. Those systems don't work on itself. They're They have to be integrated, information has to be shared, and that's actually what we do, looking at the operation, our client's ambition, and make sure it all works together really well. So thank you, and hope to see you again in business.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor with you today. NACO Netherlands Airport Consultants has been established in 1945. You have your Santos Dumont moment. Harder? Oh. Oh, okay. Better? Okay. As I said, you have your Santos Dumont and we have our Albert Plesman. And Albert Plesman was the first chairman of KLM Royal Dutch Airlines, but he also was the man who established Schiphol Airport Company and NACO, Netherlands Airport Consultants, with the sole purpose of helping KLM and Schiphol realize the future ambition and the dream of the Dutch aviation. Since that time, NACO has developed into a global aviation consultancy together with our sister company Intervistas here, listed on the right-hand side. We form aviation business unit of the Royal Haskoning DHV, a global engineering company that offers jobs to 7,000 individuals around the globe. What is also very important is that we have a huge responsibility as being part of the mobility value chain, as has been mentioned today many times, to aim for sustainable air mobility. NACO, together with other units of our corporation, is busy right now with heavy investments, research and development in the area of smart mobility and international transport multimodal hubs. What is very important also is that together with our global expertise, we help national governments formulate the future transportation master plans that incorporate sustainability and incorporate also smart solutions. Connectivity is crucial. Multimodal connectivity even better because it adds value. And the primary goal is to make this as much as possible sustainable and resilient for the future, whilst connecting the local markets with the international value chains. We're not stopping only with that. We also do provide the dedicated trainings, and it will be my pleasure to offer you a full review while we host you in the Netherlands. With that, I would like to finish my presentation and invite the next speaker, Sako. Two things. One, two.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is José Arsenio. I'm representing here Sako Airport Equipment. Sorry? Para mim é indiferente. Opa, foi rápido demais. A Sako Airport Equipment é uma empresa fundada em 1951. Dedica-se fundamentalmente a sistemas para cargo handling, portanto, tudo aquilo que é movimentação de ULDs, movimentação de paletes. Está localizada em Mirgo. Somos 100 profissionais a trabalhar, portanto, na fábrica. Nós próprios temos fabricação própria. E os nossos clientes, fundamentalmente, são empresas de cargo handling, e-commerce, aeroportos e forward companies. É uma empresa que tem uma atividade muito forte internacional. Estamos presentes em todo o mundo. Temos instalações fornecidas nos Estados Unidos, no Canadá, no México, no Oriente Médio. Aqui no Brasil também, recentemente, fizemos uma instalação para a DHL, no aeroporto de Viracopos. Estamos com outros projetos a discutir também aqui no Brasil e, portanto, todos os nossos sistemas se dedicam a facilitar a operação na área da carga, quer dos ULDs, quer a transporte e movimentação de paletes, fazendo com que toda a operação seja mais rápida e, ao mesmo tempo, mais ergonómica a nível dos operadores de handling. Muito obrigado. Rude? Este tem vida própria, começa a andar sozinho.
Boa tarde, eu sou o Vitor, sou sócio-diretor aqui da 270 no Brasil. Estou aqui também com o meu colega Ruud Hummels, que é o sócio lá na Holanda, e depois ele vai conversar com a gente sobre combustíveis sustentáveis, SAF. A 270 é uma empresa de consultoria em aviação. Nosso foco é trazer soluções inovadoras e nós somos uma das líderes em consultoria de aviação no mundo. Nosso foco é na otimização das operações aeroportuárias e de espaço aéreo. Então, aeroporto e espaço aéreo. Nossos clientes vão de aeroportos, de operadores de aeroportos, provedores de serviço de navegação aérea, autoridades, governos e também companhias aéreas. A gente tem aproximadamente 120 funcionários espalhados pelo mundo todo. Aqui temos escritórios, temos 15 escritórios espalhados pelo mundo. A gente acredita que a gente tem que fazer negócio de forma local. Então, a gente tem escritórios espalhados por todos os lugares que a gente faz negócio, quase todos. O que fazemos? A gente acredita que a demanda pela aviação ela pode ser suprida de forma segura, eficiente, sustentável e de forma economicamente viável. Tá? Então, a gente ajuda nossos clientes a conseguir isso através de análise de dados e soluções inovadoras. Nossos pilares de serviços aqui são planejamento aeroportuário e de espaço aéreo, eficiência operacional, trazer soluções para melhorar a eficiência, para fazer uma melhor utilização da infraestrutura existente, não necessariamente construindo mais, mas aproveitando o que você já tem, safety, segurança operacional e sustentabilidade. Aqui tem alguns exemplos de projetos que a gente fez na região, na América Latina. No Brasil já trabalhamos com a CDM, já ajudamos nas rodadas de concessões. Estamos conduzindo alguns estudos para a 7ª rodada de concessões aí para os investidores, entre outras coisas. Bom, é um prazer ter apresentado para vocês. Muito obrigado.
Bom dia. I'm Hessel Rosema. I'm presenting the company Trillo BV. We're producing machines which cut the grass on the airports. What are we doing here? Every airport has a mower, cuts the grass. But what I've seen until now, today as well, is that these mowers, continue a bit, they cut and they leave the grass where it is. Big problem also this airport is, especially with the environment, more wind. Oh, that is going very fast. Yeah. Okay, only 4 seats, yeah. The problem is if you leave the grass, that the grass can get into the jets, in the engines of the aeroplanes, with possible accidents. And I'm not touching it, it's just happening. So what these machines are doing, they cut the grass and collect it at the same time. So they're compacting it, and then in a matter of hours, you can collect the grass and get rid of it and drop it somewhere. Usually, especially in the very busy airports, you have a few hours to cut the grass, and we have these very big machines that can do this in a matter of hours, usually at nighttime. And because they're quick, you can do it more often, because you need to do this every week, every 2 weeks. If the grass is long, or if it's too short, you have vegetations, you have animals, mice, snakes, rabbits, all kinds of, depending on which type of, which area, what the animals are present, and they attract birds. And birds, of course, and aeroplanes, that is not a good combination. And so these machines clean that all off. Same time, the machines are also cleaning off the runways of grass clippings and other debris. So all kinds of what humans leave behind, and in areas like with favelas around, or congonhas, with all the urban of all the houses around, people leave material and can go all over. So these machines clean it at the same time. Yeah, that's in short what our company is doing. Thank you very much. Bishop. Yeah.
Thank you. Bom dia, everybody. I think the nice thing is in aerospace, it's not just a job, it's a passion. And what I see for many years working together with Brazilian colleagues and friends, we all share the same passion when it comes to aerospace. We breathe it and we're ready for the next step. Well, 2012, we were already here with the trade delegation, together with our Queen. And basically from then onwards, we worked on a very good cooperation together. Unified International is a consultancy firm active on the edge of technology, operations, contracting, and good market know-how. And I want to take you further to this slide. Frank just introduced it already. Today we heard that the Dutch government awarded a big, I would say, subsidy support to the growth fund, or by the growth fund. And part of the growth fund is the development of a liquid hydrogen propulsion system. As Unified, we brought together all those companies you see here, which are all part of the Dutch ecosystem. The nice thing is that part of this system will go to Embraer and be part of the technology development of Embraer. So how great is that? Today, we set a big pole in the ground, working together more intensively towards the future. So after you said getting together, being together, working together, I think we're ready to make the next flight level together with our Brazilian friends. And the question would be to the infrastructure, how can we help you share our knowledge when it comes to preparing the infrastructure, preparing the airports on hydrogen electrical flights, which will be there 2028 onwards for regional commercial aircraft. It's not a matter of if, no, it's a matter of it will be there. And you better be ready. Thank you.
Hola, soy Jonas. Muy obrigado for the hosting here. Thank you so much. That's the only Portuguese I can speak, so I will leave it with that. Cerveza, also important. My name is Jonas. I'm the product manager of WCC Group. We are a software company. I'm here with my two colleagues, Fernando and Karen. Our software helps the government with screening air passengers. We see that also criminals use flights. For this, we import all the passenger information from the air carriers into our software, and we scan that with international watch lists, like Interpol, but we can also connect to your federal police watch list. The second product we have, but I have learned that Brazil has got rid of it, is the electronic visa system. But we see still many countries using an electronic travel authorization to make sure that people that are leaving the departure airport are also wanted guests on the arrival airport. That's also something we can help with. Our software connects also to different other systems at the airport. And we can help those systems with do the watch list matching. So we can connect to existing e-gates. We have a partnership with Visionbox, the Portuguese manufacturer of e-gates. We can also connect to existing border control systems of the federal police. And we can also connect to self-service kiosks. What we see is a huge trend in aviation is interactive API. It's comparable with the electronic travel authorization, where people can be stopped of boarding the plane before they enter the plane, so that you don't have the problem at your own airport by collecting those people, by arresting them, by taking them into custody, but really already before they enter the plane at the departure country, can stop them from boarding. Another important part that I've learned here in this trip on the fact-finding mission is the use of a domestic API system. Federal police would also like to see if people are traveling within the country that had a criminal background. If you are leaving Fortaleza, you come to Sao Paulo, maybe you have bad intentions, that the federal police is already aware that you are traveling. Of course, for domestic flights, you don't need to use your passport because you are in the country. But we can connect to the departure control systems of the airlines in order to make sure that when you scan your boarding pass at the pre-check gates, that it is connected to the federal police. Last but not least, we also have a web portal, especially for the smaller airports. Brazil has many airports. And to share that information of all the passengers, it's important that also the smaller aircrafts can submit their passenger information. Right now, many large airports use very expensive systems like SITA, Rockwell Collins Aerospace. You need to pay a lot of money for those systems to get the data from the air carrier to the authorities. With this web portal, especially for the smaller airports, the air carrier can just send an email, for example, to this web portal to submit the passenger data. And that's it. Thank you so much. Thanks for that. We are, of course, with the travel authorization here. The only thing I want to mention is that we can also import vessels. So that is one very important part. So people that are arriving in the country by vessels are also can also import it in our software. Thanks a lot.
Oh, that was also new to me. Good to hear. Good to hear. Thank you very much. Ruud, I would like to ask you to, let's say, to give your presentation about sustainable aviation fuel. So after Ruud, we will do a Q&A and maybe a flow over from the Q&A into the next part of the program, which should be coffee together.
See if the presentation comes up then. Technology. We're already running about 30 minutes behind on schedule, so and I sit between you and the coffee break, so that's always nice. And the gentleman that actually asked for this presentation just left the room, I understand. But nevertheless, I'm here to give you a brief introduction on sustainable aviation fuels and what we do in aviation fuels, not only in the Netherlands, but also elsewhere in Europe. F5. Here we are. My name is Ruud Hummels, Managing Director and Partner of 270. And I can see my presentation there, so that's extremely convenient. I'm here to give you a brief introduction in a couple of simple steps about what it is we're talking about, why we're talking about it, and what it means for regulators, for airports, and for perhaps also the country Brazil as a whole. let's start with why we are talking about aviation fuels. Michel showed a great picture of a hydrogen plane, but unfortunately these airplanes will come, but it will take a couple of years. We are expecting after the pandemic that traffic levels will grow again. Depending on the growth path you follow, you see the tremendous growth also of emissions that will be emitted. At the same time, we have agreed on a global level, but also on regional levels, that we are going to decrease emissions, and that poses us with a problem. If you look at two images here on the left, a commitment from 2019 through ICAO, you see in green the role that sustainable aviation fuels will have to cut emissions. So in 2019, the aviation industry felt comfortable to say, we can do it, we can stop the growth of emissions. Now it's 2022. And we are even more convinced that we can start reducing emissions. But the only way to do that in the short-term period is through the introduction of sustainable aviation fuels. Here in blue, you see 34% of the reduction that we need to achieve in Europe will be done through sustainable aviation fuels. So, let's buy some sustainable aviation fuels. What are they? Sustainable aviation fuel is a collection of things. There is not one sustainable aviation fuel. One thing, as a definition, it can only consist of less than 50% of a blend with the existing Jet A1 fuel. That's the current regulation. You can produce it mainly in three different ways. You can make use of waste materials, such as cooking oil. You can make use of biomaterials, such as corn, something that you are quite familiar with, or sugarcane. And you can also produce them synthetically. We have experience with all three production methods. Here you see the width of existing ways to produce these fuels. And you can see that that's quite a large variety of ways how to produce sustainable aviation fuels. Maybe one of the most exciting ones is the synthetic fuel, where you use hydrogen to produce sustainable aviation fuel. But what a lot of people perhaps don't know, that at the moment, more than 95% of the sustainable aviation fuels are produced through the use of waste, cooking oils, algae, etc. It's called the HEFA process. Why are we using that way of production? That is because the oil companies that are currently producing Jet A1 fuel are most familiar with this method, so it's relatively easy to change the production methods. And the other thing is also that to be called a jet fuel, it needs to contain at least 8% aromatics. And Jet A1 fuel currently contains usually about 16% aromatics. And quite a few of these other sustainable aviation fuels, they do not have that same level. So you need to produce a mix and get it after the initial processing. You need to mix it with the existing fuel and then get it certified again in order to sell it to an airline at an airport. If you look at the SAF production across the world, you see that there are a lot of initiatives, not that many production facilities in use at present. And the majority of these initiatives are in the US as well as in Europe. And you see a very large bullet in Singapore. That's the Nesta plant. That's the biggest production facility at the moment. And we're actually shipping this fuel through a container to Europe to use as a sustainable aviation fuel, which is, of course, not at all sustainable, but it is a start. So that's why we are investing in research, in setting up new production facilities. And the one that is called or mentioned in the ICAO map of SAF production facilities here in Brazil is green fuels. I haven't found a lot of information. I hope to learn more about it today. But as far as I'm aware, it's mainly research focused. We've done an assessment of the different SAF production facilities that are currently being built in Europe. And you see the quite a significant number of plants that are actually planned to come into operation in the coming years. And we need that because at present there is a huge shortage of SAF in the market. If you look at the availability, what you do see is that one after the other airline has an announcement that they bought 10 million liters of fuel. You see flights that run on biofuel for the first time. Some great initiatives, but of course this is only still an extremely small percentage of what we need. The good thing is that we are moving away from pilots, and through also mandates or commitments from companies, you see the increase of the application of SAF. It's a chaotic slide, but that was on purpose. If you look at what the World Economic Forum says, they show a number of main initiatives to increase the production and the uptake of SAF. I think you can summarize it in 3 parts. There's a lot of research funding through the Green Deal, for example, in Europe. A number of projects, a large project Schiphol Airport is involved in called Tulips. We're supporting the Stargate project. That's a €2 million project together with Brussels Airport and a couple of other airports, where we are for the first time going to be doing blending on site. At present that is not possible or not allowed. Brussels sits right on top of the NATO pipeline, and NATO is quite conservative, so they don't provide you with a SAF. At the same time, they do want to be able to sell SAF. So the only way to do that is to blend it on site. And that is something that we're going to try and do there. Then also important, if you look at the blending mandates, that there is on the one hand goals and the other hand mandates. And that's quite a difference, of course. A mandate is a lot more strict, and in Europe we now have a blending mandate of just 2% for 2025. I've also put the SAF blending mandate in the Netherlands, which at present is 0.5%. That's nothing, of course, if you compare that to what you here in Brazil are already doing with your ethanol in cars or your biodiesels. But it's simply also, it's a bit of a chicken and egg story, where we don't have enough supply to increase the amount of SAF. The third element I want to pick out is the marketplace development. Of course, you cannot get SAF into every airport around the world or throughout Brazil or throughout Europe, because there's no pipes everywhere, so you need to truck it. So another way that we've come up with to make that happen is the book and claim system, where you can basically buy sustainable aviation fuel and ensure that a certain percentage of your fuel needs, even though it's tankered at another airport, you can claim that as part of your SAF contribution. If we look at the business model overview, at present SAF, depending on the production method, is about 3 to 6 times more expensive than regular Jet A1 fuel. And that's why we need investments, why there is still a lot of research to be done. What we also see is that quite a few, but I mentioned that on the previous slide as well, that more and more airlines are starting to self-mandate and to show the commitment to reducing their carbon emissions. There are basically 3 ways to buy SAF. As a company, we make use of a corporate program, and you see more and more companies take on such initiatives, where we buy SAF certified in order to reduce our own emissions as a company. The airlines, of course, also buy SAF, and they make a change in their ticket prices in order to get a return on the difference. And as individuals, the people that fly, they can also buy SAF directly at airports or through the booking of their ticket. Lufthansa does that, for example. Then quickly on the integration of SAF in the fuel supply, I already mentioned you first produce SAF, which needs to be certified. Then you blend it with the existing fuel. It needs to be recertified, and then it's integrated into the existing fuel system. So for an airport, it is not overly complex to get SAF to your airport. It is more the complexity sits with the fuel producer. And if you do not have that direct access, then you can also truck it. And that's what is often used when you do a pilot at your airport. If we then look at different opportunities for airports to become involved, and the presentation will also be provided to you afterwards, so I don't need to go into all of the detail here, but it's all about knowledge development, about investing in this new technology, creating the ecosystems, and that's also something where in the Netherlands I think we're quite good at trying to find ways to work together to make it happen. And then there's setting the mandates and providing the guidance on how to create and deliver SAF. Some projects that we see in Europe, in which we're all involved, spread around Europe's airports are doing different things. An interesting one is the synthetic fuel that we're doing in Rotterdam, capturing CO2 from the air, and making that into a sustainable aviation fuel in the end. If you then zoom into the Netherlands, I think there's 4 major parties to keep in mind there. There is, of course, KLM that has set its mandates what to do with a sustainable aviation fuel. They also invest in a production facility in the northeast of the country. And they sell it directly to some of the partners that they work with, such as DHL and Maersk. If you look at Schiphol, the major airport group in the Netherlands, they have different airports that they operate, and they trial the synthetic fuel in Rotterdam. They are working with Nesta in Schiphol itself. And with that, you also have those other 2 players. Sky Energy is the organization which is partially funded by KLM and partially by Schiphol and a number of other investors. They are developing one of the largest production facilities in the northwest of Europe and the largest in the Netherlands. And Neste has a major production facility in the port of Rotterdam. So again, there's also cooperation between port and airport that can be quite convenient. And the last slide to conclude, it is all about cooperation. It's an ecosystem where you need to make sure that you have the right feedstock, that you have the proper way of transporting the fuel from production to the aircraft. It's about the processing, so you need a lot of different stakeholders to actually work together. You need government that sets regulation, and that is the only way to make the reduction in carbon emissions possible, because we simply do not have any other options available to us in the short-term future. It would be really interesting to hear, and I know there's something in the program about that as well, to hear about the initiatives that are taking place here in Brazil to also set up production facilities. I will leave it at that and join you for our coffee break.
15 minutes of coffee break. 15 minutes. Thanks. Ocupe o seu lugar, acione o dispositivo silencioso do aparelho eletrônico. Estamos aguardando os responsáveis pelas apresentações. Estão chegando aqui no auditório. Ok, todos no auditório. Todos no auditório. Perspectivas brasileiras, facilitação e segurança nos aeroportos brasileiros. Quem vai falar sobre isso é o senhor Tariq Pereira, gerente de segurança da aviação civil contra atos de interferência ilícita da ANAC. Por gentileza, Tariq Pereira, 10 minutos.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. And you heard a little moment later. I have only 10 minutes, so the speech will be in the fast mode. I will talk to you about some issues related to facilitation and security in Brasília airports. A short presentation. My name is Tariq Souza. I am the manager of aviation security branch. And I am also the head of department of airport infrastructure substitute. Let's begin our trip in this moment. The first place will be our main regulations. We will not read all the regulations, but I think it's important to know that these regulations exist. In the second part, we will talk a little about aviation security. In the last moment, I will share with you some highlights about facilitation. Okay, don't close your eyes. The presentation is too fast. About our main regulations. The first of all, I think it's the law number 11,182. The law of creation of ANAC. I think it's important because you can understand the major competencies of our agency, especially the main process of regulation, certification, and oversight. The second regulation that I would like to share with you is the PNAVSEC. PNAVSEC, it's the Brazilian Civil Aviation Security Program. And this PNAVSEC, this program, contains useful information about the competences of all Brazilian agencies linked to security, aviation security, and facilitation. I think it is important to you, if you have some time, to read this documentation, decree number 7168, because you will obtain an overview of the competences of all Brazilian agencies linked AVSEC and facilitation. The last one is the resolution ANAC number 499. These resolutions contain all standards that ANAC needed to do regarding aviation security. Well, the first part is done, and we are going to aviation security. I will share with you a short overview about our system and the perspectives. I think the slide of perspectives could be more interesting for you because you can see with me what we are planning for the future. A little overview. About regulation, of course, Brazil, our regulation, aviation security regulation, is harmonized with ICAO Annex 17. In the last, regarding, for example, the last audit conducted by ICAO, we only has one finding still open, and I think it will be closing the next months. So Brazil is totally aligned with the ICAO standards, the standards and recommended practices. About the certification, nowadays Brazil has 88 security program approved. What it means? That means that 98% of domestic passengers and almost 100% of international passengers are processed in aviation security certified airports. About the oversight, of course, Brazil conducts audits, inspections, and testings aligned with the ANAC 17. And I think it's interesting information. Our activities, our quality control activities are based on risk management. I think it's important to say because we need to focus on our personnel and our time and money in the airports that we need to conduct these AVSEC inspections. Well, I'd like to share with you some information about the implementation of Global Aviation Security Plan. ICAO, GAZEP, it's a normal name. Here in Brazil, we established the Brazilian Aviation Security Team, a working group that has representatives of government and the industry. And it's important because in this budget, we can address the important and urgent projects of aviation security and about facilitation. And the last topic about the overview, Brazil has nominated members to the AVSEC panel, ICAO AVSEC panel, and recently to the cybersecurity panel. Well, Brazil, of course, is well representative in the panels of ICAO. I think the next slide is the most interesting, so don't close your eyes. And the perspectives of the future. I think the first of all is related about this security inspection of hold baggage in domestic flights. I really believe that you know that all hold baggage in international flights need to be screened. But it's not necessary to be done in domestic flights. In the last year, the board of directors was established the obligation for the airports and the airlines to conduct inspections for the hold baggage at the main airports in Brazil. I think it's an important question because the airports and the airlines needs to invest a huge amount of money to comply with this obligation, and it will occur in the next years. The second point is related to the improvement of the equipment technology using the process of screening at airports checkpoints. Of course, our equipment is up to date. It's important to identify any threats in our system, but there is newer technologies that I can imagine that will be the operators will bring to us. The equipment it's good, but there are some new technologies that I think it's important to Brazil and to the operators to bring. Of course, it will cost money, but I think it will a good choice for the operators. And the last one about AVSEC, of course, is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, it's a new threat, not only for Brazil, but all countries in the world. The world is constant change, and we have to face, in this moment, virtual terrorists. And of course, Brazil, ANAC, the Brazilian Air Force, have different standards to prevent cyber attacks. But I think it's important the government and the industry work together to improve our defenses against these virtual attacks, cyber attacks. I think it's an important issue that we need to face, and I think in the future, security it will be more concerned about this kind of terrorists than physical terrorists. I think the future it's coming in a fast way. Facilitation, I think is the last part, so I will present you in 10 minutes a little overview and the perspectives for the future. Of course, Brazil, our regulations is harmonized with Annex 9, ICAO Annex 9, and I don't want to talk about COVID-19 pandemic, but it's possible. The pandemic, it was a huge impact on facilitation process, and we have Brazil and all countries in the world have to apply different strategies to avoid the spread rate of the disease internally. Of course, the facilitation process was impacted by this pandemic. And the solution is on the technology. I think the strong cooperation between the authorities and the industry could face this critical moment that we are living. Using an expression in a notorious Disney series named The Mandalorian, this is the way. Perspectives for the next years. I would like to share with you information about the OSS, One-Stop Security. One-Stop Security is a process established by ICAO, and how it works in operational words. Well, after establishing agreement with another state, Brazil, for example, doesn't need to execute inspections to the passengers, their cabin or hold baggage on international connections, flights, because the original inspection is recognized by Brazil. We are working hard to implement a one-stop security agreement with Spain, Uruguay, and the United States. I think it will happen in the next months, and I think it will a huge breaking point for the international flights that flight through Brazil. Another point it's about the project named Safe Boarding. We test in the last years a form to allow the passengers in the crew to access the security restricted areas using their biometric data. It's important to us to use the technology, and I think it will be the future, a near future, because the data is available in the government database, and what we need to do, it's only linked the data with the government, with the passengers, and the crew too. It will, the project, the pilot, it's concluded, the results are extremely positive, and it will occur certainly in the next months. And the last topic, it's about the API and PNR data. API is the Advanced Passenger Information, PNR, a passenger name record. This kind of data, it's sent by the airlines to the government. Here in Brazil, our agency is the federal policy that receives the data from international flights. But in the last years, the board of ANAC directors established an obligation to the airlines to send the data, API and PNR data for the domestic flights. The data will increase in a huge proportion, and I think the use of data can allow us to think out of the box. For example, why not allow different levels of security procedures for different passengers? Nowadays, the same procedure of inspection it's applied for all passengers. Why not different procedures for different passengers? It's possible if you know who is traveling in this plane in that moment. I think that's it. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and have a nice Passover. Good afternoon.
Por gentileza, a senhora Marcela Braga Anselmi, chefe da Assessoria Internacional e Ambiental da ANAC. Ela vai falar então sobre o futuro dos biocombustíveis na aviação brasileira. Por gentileza.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marcela. I'm the head of the International and Environmental Office here at ANAC. I have a presentation for you. I'll try to be as quick as possible, but I hope to have a final message here for you and to show that Brazil has an immense potential for SAF production, and we need to explore this potential as soon as possible to really achieve the decarbonization of aviation, not only in Brazil, but also in the world. I think we have the potential not only to supply the demand internally in Brazil, but as well in other airlines from all over the world. So my presentation is structured in a way that I will show to you that this industry of biofuels, it is still a nascent industry, and we need to be sure that we have the right incentives in place to have it align with the international standards that are set by ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, and as well as with other countries, because aviation works in a network, so whatever we decide here in Brazil, it has consequences for other airlines around the world. And we need to make sure that our airlines, they can have access to the SAF in Europe, in the United States, in Africa, and other airlines have access to our biofuels here as well. So just to give a quick glimpse of what we have in terms of environmental commitments. We have the Paris Agreement, but it doesn't include the emissions for the international aviation. This was set aside, and the mandate was given to the ICAO to set the goals and the limits of for reduction of CO2 emissions from the international aviation. So now we have, for domestic aviation, Paris Agreement, but for the international aviation, ICAO. And under ICAO, we have three main goals here. The first one is a 2 annual fuel efficiency improvement through 2050. And the most important one, the carbon neutral growth from 2020 onwards. To achieve this goal, ICAO set the goal based in sector measures, which means improvement of technology, operations, but as well as the use of the I would say the substantive use of SAF. And for the gap, we have a gap filler, which is CORSIA. CORSIA is based on offsetting measures, offsetting credits that those airlines that are not able to achieve the reduction by in sector measures, they need to buy the offsettings from other markets. So here is the chance. As you see, the gap is very substantive. And if we're not achieving sector measures, and we are talking about a sector that's already green, that's already working its high efficiency, so we need to talk about how to achieve the transition of the energy that is used by the aviation sector. So to produce biofuels, as you know, we have a large let's say, basket of possible ways to produce it. We have feedstocks from food. We also have waste, municipal waste. And we have some technologies that are being explored, like hydrogen. But we know that for the commercial aviation, it's a little bit in the future. It's a long-term technology that will be available for the aviation. So for now, what we have is basically biofuels. And Brazil has a huge potential to produce it right away. We have a tradition of producing ethanol for vehicles, biodiesel. And so we have like the technology and the knowledge to produce for SAF as well. But we need to make some adjustments in our production for that, and we need investments for that. So that's the main message here. Brazil, it's a key player for the industry to achieve decarbonization. It's also important just to have in mind that besides the feedstock that we use for biofuels, we also have some pathways, technologies that are used to produce this biofuel because it needs to be drop-in. This is what we have certified, so it's not simply reproducing what we have, the policies and the methodologies that we have for traditional transportation. In the civil aviation, we have some standards concerning safety, so it's important that this fuel has all the technical certification that allow us to use it in the aircraft and to ensure that it's safe to fly with those fuels. And what comes to Brazil in this regard? So we are working together with all the government bodies to ensure that we have in place all the requirements in terms of technical requirements to produce the biofuels. And we are discussing internally how we can provide the right framework in terms of regulation and policies to ensure an environment that is attractive to investors. As I said, for now, we don't have the production of SAF in Brazil. We have the potential for that. And having a policy that shows for stakeholders what we want to achieve and how we can achieve it, I think it's important to settle the ground to achieve the investments from the private sector. This is a partnership, I think, between the private and the public sector. As government, we don't have enough budget to put in place and to make sure that this production happens, but we can put the right incentives in terms of policies and regulations for that. So ANAC, together with the Ministry of Transportation and the Ministry of Energy, we are working also with the industry, with all stakeholders that take part of this, not only airlines, but also airports and the producers of SAF and biofuels in Brazil, to see what we can achieve. And for now, what we have been discussing is something based on what the rest of the world already has. When we go to Europe, the United States, we have policies which are based on subsidies or policies that are based in a mandatory mixture of in the Jet A, a percentage of mixing of biofuels. So we try to see how it can work in Brazil. We have some challenges. Brazil is a huge country with many airports. We are talking about 1,000 public airports in different regions, and we know that sometimes it's hard to achieve, and the logistical for having SAF, for example, in Amazonia, can be very tough. So how can we put the right incentives not to make it mandatory of all the Jet A have a fixed mix of SAF, and to make it more efficient in terms of costs, but also in terms of the environment. We don't want to have SAF in places that will emit more to arrive in the place than the SAF itself. So what we are talking here in the Brazilian government, it's an obligation of having emissions reductions. So we put these obligations to airlines. So you have to reduce your emissions 1%, 2% per year, and this needs to be achieved through the use of SAF. How you're going to do it, it's up to you. You can choose the more efficient one. Of course, if you put it in terms of reduction of CO2 emissions, you're going to choose the one that is more efficient, more cost efficient, let's say. And also, you don't need to make it mandatory of all airports in Brazil to have the SAF. We can concentrate this where it's logistically feasible For example, where the production of SAF is and where the airports are, we can concentrate that in the same place. It makes more sense to do this way. So that's what we are talking about, a mandate of fixed reduction of CO2 emissions for airlines. So this is not the only tool in terms of what we can do in terms of policies. This is just one tool, and it needs to be combined with other ones. So we are also in this policy considering funding of projects, developing new technologies, new feedstocks. As I said, Brazil has a potential from soybeans, from sugarcane, but we also have some kind of productions that are very specific to our country. And those productions of feedstocks, they can be used in a very efficient way in terms of very high-level efficient SAFs that has a very good rate of reductions of CO2 emissions in a very low cost. But for that, we need to explore in terms of science, do some research on the possibility of those feedstocks. And this is something that we are considering in our policy to how we can include the universities, institutes, research centers on making it more broad and more comprehensive and not relies on biofuels and biofuels on the traditional feedstocks. And also we have in this policy the certification and the quality of those SAFs. As I said, it cannot be any SAF. We have now only certified for drop-in SAF in the Jet A in a certain amount, which is 50%. We cannot have 100% yet of SAF in the engines of the aircraft. And we also need to work on new pathways of producing new technologies for producing SAF. And well, the goal is decarbonization, as I said, and we are also talking about incentivizing the exportation of this SAF, so it's not only based in the Brazilian market, but how we can make it possible to produce and to export it to other countries, and also to have the different different taxes for this SAF in order to make it a more level playing field with the traditional Jet A. Just for my final remarks, what we have been seeing here in Brazil, it's many countries are talking about promoting SAF, and we need to make sure that the SAF is aligned with the final goal. We don't want to have a SAF that is not sustainable, only to replace the traditional fossil fuel. We need to make sure that the SAF is really sustainable, and it's aligned with the goals of all countries, which is decarbonization. So that's why we are trying to bring this rationale of not having the mix per se, but a mixing that makes sense, that incentivizes the reduction of CO2 emissions for the sector. And also a policy that must be agnostic in terms of it needs to be comprehensive. We cannot rely on specific kinds of technologies or specific kinds of biomass to produce SAF. We are talking about a large demand for the next years. ICAO is talking also about new goals, new very ambitious goals for the civil aviation, including I would say that the industry itself is going to this path. IATA, for example, has already announced net zero for 2050. So how we can put in place a goal that is achievable, and we do not rely on a goal that doesn't bring the decarbonization and the transition of the aviation sector, and only replace one thing for the other and relies on offsetting, for example, which is not the answer for the environment. So SAF, I would say, is the answer. And for that, we need always to explore all the possibilities in terms of technology, feedstocks, and this requires investments. And finally, SAF as a public policy needs to be aligned with the industry commitment. We cannot do this alone as government, and the industry itself also cannot do all that is required alone. We need to work together as a cooperation between public and private sectors and see how we can achieve the real production, how we can have these ideas that are only ideas now into place. When we see now where the SAF is And if you go to the ICAO's website, for example, you can see it's very concentrated in some parts of United States and some countries in Europe. And this does not meet the demand, and it does not arrive to us in Brazil or even to Latin America and Africa. And in those countries are the potential for the production. So this is something that we need to do together as government. We need to work on cooperation between states, but also between states and the industry. And finally, we also need to see how those goals can be promoted in a fair way. We are talking about commitments in the international level, at ICAO, at the Paris Agreement for all countries, and we know that the responsibilities are for all, but we have different realities. And so maybe SAF is the place where we can go, where all stakeholders can act together without creating any market distortions. Because when we go to other solutions, for example, market-based measures, and Corsia is one example, we create something for the industry that we don't want, which is additional costs that are not in sector, and especially different costs for different countries. So SAF is the way, not only in terms of in the environment itself, but also in the let's say it addresses the real concept of sustainable development in its three pillars: social, economical, and environmental as well. And the benefits for the society they are huge. So for example, in Brazil, we are talking about investing in the production. We know we have the knowledge, but also to have some spillover effects through all the economy, generating jobs and income for our society. So that's my final message here. I hope I have given it to you that we believe as the Brazilian government that this is the way to achieve the real sustainable development in sector. So thanks so much. Thank you very much.
Por gentileza, senhor Roberto Honorato, superintendente de aeronavegabilidade da ANAC, e o tema, o desenvolvimento de aeronaves eVTOL.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Very nice to see a lot of business opportunities to be discussing this afternoon. And I will bring a topic that is something very new, a sector that is underdeveloped in the last 3 years, I guess. We see a lot of new, maturity is increasing in the last 3 years. But I actually changed my presentation at the beginning of this section because I see that I could be more my objective and the ideas that are important for you. So I wanted to say that Brazil is part of the development of the global eVTOL business development. So we are discussing about new area, advanced urban air mobility is the sector that we are talking here. So as you can see, there are some news that involves operators, Brazilian operators that are planning to operate foreigners eVTOLs here in Brazil. And the other side, we have also certification that has been already started a few weeks ago. So there is a manufacturer here in Brazil also. And I find some interesting ideas. There's a research from SMG Consulting is available online, and it's very nice to see that almost 10,000 orders of eVTOL is already announced by the manufacturers. And as you can see, is a sector that is in the beginning. So just 5% of the orders are FEM orders, but for sure is something that is going to move for to be real in our real daily life. Brazilian operators are responsible for 9% of these orders, and in three manufacturers, one Brazilian manufacturer and 2 European manufacturers. And also the Brazilian industry is the OEM that individually has the higher number of orders. So it's nice to see this information. Yeah, and then the question that we hear a lot of times, especially from investors, is the aviation regulation ready for this new sector? And during the coffee break, I was discussing with Anker about that, and we see that we already have the maturity of the regulation for the start of this technology. For sure, as you can see, many manufacturers are developing their equipments and different stages of maturity, but this industry is still under development. And of course, if we think about a new regulation or things that we have to improve in our regulation, and for sure we have to do that, in the future we have to work to avoid barriers for the developments of new technologies, not just the concept of the new aircraft, but the technology embedded in this aircraft is something very new. But also we have to avoid or to fix the anachronisms. We are not going to accept that the regulation is outdated. It's not the case. The fact is the regulation was developed maybe 30, 40 years ago, and you have to review and to fit this regulation to the new sector, the new aircraft, the new environment, the new ecosystem. And also we have to promote the safety standards. For sure, we need to have a new urban air mobility that is safe, and you have to be ready to defend and explain this for the society as a whole. Also, we have to work on international acceptance of course, as I already showed with the data that we saw in the last slide. Manufacturers are selling around the world, and there are operators and all the countries waiting for the technology. And for sure, we could increase the transparency and compliance and the development of the regulation, so the authorities could explore ways and more new ways to develop migration, always trying to involve the industry as much as possible in the development of the new regulation. And I'm responsible for aircraft certification here at ANAC, so this is the first door that a manufacturer have to pass through, and I can tell you that the regulation is already ready for new technology. There are a lot of mechanisms in the regulation that open the possibility for a manufacturer to explore the new technology, to experiment, to propose new basis, the new standard for that specific aircraft. So we can say that the certification base, that is the requirements that must be complied, is flexible and adaptive. It could fit to the situation that the manufacturer wanted to certify. And at the end, our main goal is to say if it is safe or not. And we are the last years we are working really hard to consider more consensus standards, so standards made by the industry, and where I have a lot of examples in our regulation for the traditional aviation. So this is one idea that we already bring to the table right now. And as I said, the culture of experimentation is something that there is already a regulation provision for that, and we always incentivize the manufacturers to do that. For example, this one is a prototype of the eVTOL developed here in Brazil, as you can see, with Brazilian marks, because we approved that experimental aircraft. And it's just as an example, we did the same strategy for the development of the drones. A few years ago, Brazilians already had thousands of drones, and we have to provide a regulation to allow a lot of new business born with this new technology, and we now restrict the category up to 25 kilograms. We already have almost 100,000 drones in our registry. And for class 2 and 3, this situation here is just for professional uses. We have 10 aircraft, 10 drones already approved for commercial operations. So it's this idea is we just exercise the idea that I explained to you a few years ago, and you see that we have success on that. And saying about highlighting the opportunities for eVTOL, we see that the ecosystem is very wide, and so we'll have vertiports, we have traffic management, pilot training, energy supply is something very new, the aircraft certification. So there are a lot of opportunities for new business and cooperation here. And also, in the level of technology embedded in this equipment, we have we are exploring new levels of autonomy, artificial intelligence, distributed propulsion. So there are a lot of opportunities, not just for the business development, but also for research on these areas. And just a final note, very important, we are working very hard for international compatibility, and our intentions here is to make possible for an aircraft certified in Brazil to operate abroad, and also the opposite, to allow the Brazilian operators to buy and to operate foreigners' aircraft. And so I want to highlight that we have a huge and a very mature agreement with the European Union, and so we work very close to EASA. We have a higher level of acceptance with EASA, so the environment for this kind of cooperation between Brazil and the Netherlands, I think, is very promising. So this is my message here. Thank you very much for having me.
Senhoras e senhores, o papel e os desenvolvimentos da CGNA-DCEA com o coronel aviador Marcelo Jorge Cavalcante, comandante do Centro de Gerenciamento da Navegação Aérea, CGNA.
Boa tarde a todos. É uma grande honra estar aqui apresentando, né, um pouco do nosso trabalho. Todo mundo aqui apresentou um pouco da perspectiva do futuro, a gente vai apresentar a necessidade do presente, né? O combustível está caro, a aviação precisa ser mais eficiente, e aí quem entra o CGNA. O CGNA é um órgão é uma organização do DCEA, Organização Militar do DCEA. O DCEA é o Departamento de Controle do Espaço Aéreo, responsável pelo controle de todo o espaço aéreo brasileiro. Oi? Para onde? A missão do CGNA é balançar a demanda de voos com a infraestrutura disponível. Então, existe a malha aérea e existe a infraestrutura capaz de absorver essa quantidade de voos diariamente. Apenas para contextualizar, o CGNA figura entre os 3 maiores centros do mundo. E o nosso sistema foi vendido para a Índia. Nós temos um trabalho contínuo com o Eurocontrol, a equipe de Masters. Faz contato direto conosco e desenvolve algumas técnicas. Nós trabalhamos dentro do ciclo ATFM. O ciclo é composto da preparação da malha, 6 meses antes, a preparação para a operação daquela malha proposta, com 7 dias antes, e a operação em si, que ocorre no dia. Depois todo o ciclo é reanalisado e melhorado o que não funcionou muito bem. A nossa estrutura interna ela foi adaptada também para esse ciclo. Então, nossos setores são dispostos exatamente como funciona o ciclo de gerenciamento de fluxo. A principal ferramenta que nós temos é a decisão colaborativa. Com ela, nós conseguimos aumentar a segurança, a fluidez, a economia e também, por consequência, o meio ambiente, porque nós estamos buscando o tempo todo a eficiência. Nós buscamos a eficiência desde a fase estratégica do ciclo. E viemos melhorando o tempo todo analisando o que não vai ocorrer muito bem na operação diária, né? Vai entrar o NOTAM, vai ter uma obra, o que não vai funcionar muito bem? E nós vamos contornando os obstáculos. Todo esse trabalho é feito em parceria com todos os entes do governo e entidades também civis. Entre elas, até inclusive as empresas aéreas. Quando eu falei presente, essas são apenas algumas atuações agora, nesse momento, que nós estamos melhorando. Nós estamos melhorando todas as rotas do eixo Sudeste-Nordeste, Sul até o Nordeste, porque depois da pandemia houve uma mudança de característica de malha. Melhoramos também a questão dos setores de espaço aéreo para absorver essa malha, porque, na verdade, o setor de espaço aéreo ele é um elemento físico. Ele tem um limite de capacidade como se fosse um aeroporto, mas ele é moldável. E nós estamos moldando o tempo todo para absorver cada vez mais. Na questão de plano de voo, também estamos proporcionando um melhor tratamento, porque a gente entende que isso traz mais eficiência até na análise do impacto. Nós monitoramos todo o espaço aéreo RVSM da América do Sul e do Caribe. E figuramos entre as 13 do mundo. Estamos desenvolvendo algumas técnicas, como eu falei no início. São diversos projetos que o DCE atua atualmente. Não daria para passar isso tudo agora, né? Teria que ficar aqui o dia todo falando. E só que o CGNA especificamente está trabalhando em alguns projetos. Um deles é o desenvolvimento de uma metodologia de meteorologia. Nós trabalhamos com tecnologia de simulação, utilizamos para isso o software TAAN, que é de total conhecimento das equipes do mundo todo. Temos técnicas desenvolvidas no próprio CGNA. Nós autorizamos e monitoramos o uso de drone em todo o espaço aéreo brasileiro. Coordenamos ações de transporte de órgãos também, no Brasil inteiro, só para ter uma dimensão da grandeza do volume transportado. Quando eu digo que nós trabalhamos no desenvolvimento, no aprimoramento da eficiência das rotas, esse trabalho é conjunto. Uma das parceiras é a ABA, que é a Associação Brasileira de Empresas Aéreas. Isso aqui é um exemplo, essa reunião acontece a cada 15 dias. Então, hoje é virtual, né? Mas o tempo todo nós estamos trabalhando. E os resultados, né? Os resultados começam a vir. Então, quando eu digo hoje existe a necessidade realmente, nós buscamos atingir a eficiência no dia de hoje, realmente melhorar cada dia. Então, isso aqui, ó, nós estamos conseguindo anualmente trazer uma eficiência para cada empresa em torno de 1,5% a 2% em questões de economia de combustível. Engraçado até que algumas rotas planejadas começaram a ter um ganho de eficiência tão grande que as empresas começaram a chegar com muita antecedência. E agora a gente tem um outro problema para corrigir, que é um problema bom. A aeronave chegando com 15 minutos de antecedência no aeroporto. Virou o jogo, virou um problema. Antecedência ao invés do atraso. Entendeu? Só para ter uma noção do desempenho que nós estamos conseguindo alcançar. E o segredo disso é a integração. Nosso conhecimento também está sendo difundido para toda a América do Sul e hoje nós estamos trabalhando com todos os países. Até o Panamá entrou no nosso time e está trabalhando junto com a gente. Obrigado.
Senhoras e senhores, para o encerramento deste meeting, por gentileza, senhor. Please, fique à vontade.
Se tiver algumas perguntas para as palestrantes, aqui tem um microfone, tá? Tá tudo certo? Ninguém quer palavra? Não? Ok, tá bom.
Ok. Então, para encerramento deste meeting, por gentileza, Mr. Frank Jansen, diretor administrativo do Grupo Aeroespacial dos Países Baixos, e o senhor Luiz Ricardo de Souza Nascimento, diretor da ANAC. As considerações finais. Mr. Frank Jansen, please.
I assumed that I was asked to give some closing remarks. Good. Okay. I think what we have seen here today is more or less bringing people together and expressing developments in each other's area, and to see if they have some kind of a relationship with each other. And I have the feeling, in particular after the last 4 presentations of Giovanni and of Marcela and Roberto and Marcelo, that we struggle, but we also see opportunities in different ways that are both of interest to you and to us. I think the SAF is, of course, is the short-term solution to reduce the CO2 emission. Yeah. On the other hand, SAF needs to be made, and needs to be made in huge quantities. And we're not the only one who would like to have SAF. And let's say we're not the only one who would like to use a piece of the earth to produce SAF. So there are huge challenges to make SAF, and to make SAF in enough quantities, and to make SAF usable for the aviation. So I think that is something that needs to be maybe addressed as a topic, as an item for further mutual discussion, because I think it is really impossible. It is really difficult to come to conclusions now immediately, but I think that we have seen from both sides what Ruud presented and also what Giovanna presented. You know that there are challenges that, Marcelo, that there are challenges that we need to tackle on both sides. So I think that is an interesting topic. What is also, I think, what was for us interesting to see is what is going on in the area of passenger security. Actually, that was also presented today by one of the companies, and I think that the idea of seeing if it is possible to group passengers to, let's say, to a risk, some kind of a risk assessment, and then apply certain systems or processes to have more efficient and faster through passing through the airport, is, I think, a really interesting topic to be further addressed. And the eVTOLs, yeah, it's also a bit of a dream. Eh? It's a dream. I think that everybody who is my age, maybe not many here, but we have seen the Star Trek. You remember Star Trek? And at that time we thought, that's never going to happen. And every time that when I see new technologies, I think, I saw that in Star Trek already 40 years ago. How is it possible? You know, that it now? So that means actually, I get more and more faith that if we can think of something, then we will also be able to make that. And so that is, I think, something that we can also take along, that if we have ambitions and we put the right amount of energy in it, then it will happen. And the eVTOLs is one of those things that I see happening. And of course, we need to see where it is more applicable or less applicable, but it will happen. I mean, it's already happening, actually. So I think it's good that we heard a platform for arranging safety standards. I really like that. And also here, again, the international alignment. That is something that is that I think is a topic that we could further address later on. And then, yeah, the whole integration of the airspace and how to deal with that. And you said it very efficient, you know. Okay, what do you need in flights? Okay, we will make sure that you have the roads or the airways to do that and the procedures. But it is really complicated, I think. Yeah? And this is only one country, by the way, but if we see what is happening in Europe, yeah, with the different countries and how to circumvent all the military areas, and it's only flying, let's say, more efficient routes in Europe will reduce the CO2 by 15%. So, indeed, I think something that we will be able to learn from each other. So, my conclusion remark actually of today is that I can confirm what our intentions were in the beginning. Do we see topics of priority that we consider from both sides, let's say, very good to continue our discussions? So I really look forward, let's say, to hear what is your view on what we have seen today.
Excellent things. I really believe that we are in the right place to do that. And you know, Frank, I'm very happy to share with this closed section with you because I want to go longer. I not want to go fast. So we are here in this room doing exactly that you said in the last phrase in your introduce yourself when you did that. So it's a good opportunity. I have to reduce my 10-page speech here because we are late on the schedule. And for Brazilians, today is Friday, so we have a holiday tomorrow. So I have to reduce that. But I cannot finish without saying that events like this is very important to have the people together in the same room, looking for some same goals, as you said, in case of evento, for instance, and the others. SAF, it's very important for us. Do you know we have discussed SAF in our energy metrics in Brazil, not only in the ANAC, but even in the Congress. We have to approve the laws to have this here. So we are looking for, not only for financials, for opportunities, but also for all the regulatory framework to get the right place, the right SAF, in the right aircrafts all the time. So it's very, very important for us. And we know we have a huge challenge in front of us. So we need the cooperation as you, as Netherlands, as how can I say, an important country in Europe to bring with us to that world to facilitate our understanding and the access for all the technologies that we have over there. So I would like to finish my thoughts saying great for the Netherlands Dutch embassy here in Brazil to provide, to bring the people from Europe to here to stay with us 3 or 4 days, visiting our airports, seeing different models, as you said, for me, the coffee break, that's correct. So we are looking to keep this partnership more long time from now. So thank you so much for coming here, and thank you on behalf of ANAC's board to have you, to host you here in our Agência. And I'm quite sure that you are in the right place to do that, because you believe in a strong sector. We believe that we have work to do in the future, but at the same time, we believe that we have the right people to do that. So thank you again, and have a good and safe back trip that people that live in Brasília today, okay? For Brazilians, we have a Santa Páscoa para nós esse final de semana, ok? Abraço em todos. A big hug for all. Thanks so much.
And Mr. Frank Jansen, this event is officially over. Once again, have a nice holiday. Thank you for your presence.